Hi, welcome back,
Hi,
Mohamed.
welcome.
Hope you had 5 minutes break and you are ready to rock on the next talk.
I hope so. Did you miss me?
Of course. Okay,
Thank you. Me too. I missed you, all of you guys. But it's first time virtually. It's a new experience. It's a new experience. We are trying to get used to it, but definitely physically meeting people, talking, engaging, it's much different than just virtually. But what to do?
yeah.
We have to keep ourselves safe and healthy.
Yeah, that's the most important this year to stay safe, to stay healthy. And we hope to meet in person next year and meet you in Ukraine
Yes.
back.
Ah,
Okay,
definitely.
so
It will be my
please
pleasure.
start your next
So,
talk.
so you can see my presentation?
Just in a second.
Okay.
Yes, we do now. We hear you, we see the presentation, everything is okay?
And what about full screen? Is it great?
Yeah, it's full screen.
Great, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Again, Devoxian people from Ukraine and people who are joining from the rest of the world. Uh, for the people who attended my session previously, we were speaking about Java and a new feature and everything that we have, and how Java is really revolutionize the industry for making Java more coping with the new things that we have, like cloud computing and containerization, everything like this, and how different frameworks make use of this kind of enhancement to start growing more and become more faster startup and memory efficient usage, especially for cloud environment. And definitely one part of using Java is developing APIs, either external APIs, or sometimes you have your layer system inside your application, either Java EE or Spring, which is Jakarta EE now, or you're layering your Spring into a repository, then you have services, then you have REST controller, integration part, event management, whatever it is. We need to make sure sometimes that we are designing this API more safe and also in a correct way. And in Java, since Java 8, we have a class called optional. Optional class is a very special class, and its creation is intended to be really tended to be the same like other languages. It has a history, and we always study the languages and see what is we need and what we miss in order to make Java more better. And yes, we do. Java does it. So the idea behind introducing optional, it came from Stream. All of us aware of Stream API. So whenever you aggregate or sum or minimum or count or something for normal number-based variables or aggregation, you have something. You have either zero or the result, right? But what about objects? What about the containers? What about this kind of objects? So either you will have null or something. And we would like to avoid it because we don't need to break the code and also to introduce you a null as a result. We have to have something called, okay, we need to wrap your result, either it's exist or not exist. So this is why optional is out there. It's a container that contain your value and give you insight, either this value is in exist or not exist. It has many way of doing like interaction with streaming, doing filtration, doing mapping. We are going to see all of this during my revision for the code reviews, the BRs that I review with my people in teams consultancy. I found sometimes people, yes, they are obsessed using optional, and they usually sometimes doing in wrong way or use it in wrong way. This is why I decided to have all collecting all these repeated problems and give you insight about this in this presentation about what to do or what not to do. So my name is Mohamed Taman, and I'm Chief Solutions Architect at Efortel, Belgium. I'm based in Serbia, and also I'm a Java champion and groundbreaker ambassador for Oracle. I'm author and international speaker, so I'm speaking to you with a pleasure as of now. So this is recent. All my publication goes under Java Magazine recently, Oracle Magazine, IBM Developer Work, and InfoQ. And this is my last publication, like JavaFX Essentials 2015, getting started with clean code, Java SE9, and also hands-on experience in using shell programming with Java. And I have written about this presentation in Java Magazine, and this is the first article, and the second article already published, but I didn't update my, oh my God, I'm lazy, man. So I have to update it. But if you go for Java Magazine, both of them referring to each other. You are welcome, definitely, to connect with me as I see people following me on Twitter. It's my great pleasure and honor to have you as a followers, and I wish you will get more insight and get useful stuff I share for you. And you are welcome to connect to me or search about my name in Google, as I said before, and you are done contacting me. Let's jump in. And actually, I divided the session into questions. And let's see, the first question says like, how to survive from null pointer exceptions. If we would like to introduce a clean API that relies not to introduce like null pointer exception if something exists or not, how we can make it like this. Second question, okay, we have a values, how to return or set when there is no value. So instead of setting something else or setting null in order to just present that we don't have a value, and we can do something else. And also how to consume optional values effectively. There is a lot of functions optional have, and we would like to know when to use what. And this is the fourth question is how to avoid optional anti-patterns. Because as I told you, I have seen a lot of people using optional, but in wrong way. So we have anti-patterns and we're going to address it. And lastly, how to use optional professionally interacting with different APIs like Stream API and Lambda and all of this kind of filtration and doing this. Let's jump in and see. Let's address first question, which is someone of my developers told me like, oh man, I'm getting null even when I'm using optional. How could it happen? I'm using optional. How I could get null pointer exception? Yes, you can if you do something like this. So never assign null to an optional variable. So don't do this in order to reveal. I told you optionals exist to give you insight, either the employee inside it exist or not. So you have function to do this. So instead of doing this, which is wrong way, and definitely if you're trying to use optional dot, whatever the method is, boom, null pointer exception, which is lovely. And we're trying to get rid of this. So instead of doing this kind of simple line, you just always have to initialize optional as an empty option. This is very important. So if you search the database, so the database either will return optional of employee, or if you don't have it using is present, you can return an empty optional. And if you would like to check this optional, it will not throw null pointer exception, right? It's very simple. And by the way, this optional .empty is exists since Java 8. So whenever you see this legend here, it means since when this method is exist in which GDK version, okay? So secondly, never call optional.get directly to get the value. Oh, how can I get it, man? So this is intended to call it for get, to optional.get. I would like to get my employee. Yes, we have this call. And in order to do this, what will happen here? Can you imagine it? Maybe if you are interacting, I can hear you saying, man, this you should first check about the presence of the value and then do something. So we should say if employee is present, get, else do something else. either return or create an empty or something like this. Why we have to do this? Because get throws an exception if it doesn't have a value. So we didn't make it safe. So we have to check first with is present before we calling get directly, because if you don't this and you don't have a value, even if you make it safe and you have empty optional, you will get no such element exception. Okay, don't use null directly when you have an optional and need a null reference. For example, sometimes, yes, we don't need to have it, but how to do it? And when you do optional like invoking dynamic classes, so you say, okay, you have your invocation. So this method will contain the optional class if it's instance variable or normal. If it's this method is a static or instance method. So how to differentiate is by invoking to know this. So either if we trying to invoke the method and see if it already exists, I can method invoke instance class dot get. Okay, if it's static, so we are calling or trying to get a method from a class, and this class has some declaration for the method. Either the method is the static or normal public instance method. So we would like, if it's a static, we have to call invoked in different way than with instance method. So if it's static, you can call it directly from here, and then it will call the method for you dynamically. If it's not, you pass null, then you pass the method and the class. So, and this is an ugly way. If you would like to get rid of this, and already we have optional, so what to do? It's very easy. We can change this to have this. We have the method, and then we get the method either in my class, and then we can my class.instance or else null. What does it mean? It means that, and here is the class and everything. So it means that invoke it, and if it's really exists, it will return. If it's not, return null. So you use or else in order to provide another different value for the optional. So we can make it easy in one statement to use like this. And this is definitely since Java 8. The second question is what to do when no value is present. Don't rely that using or else just to return null. No, it doesn't. It shouldn't meant to be like that. But in our case, if you have a case like this and you would like to have a null for the method, because this is a design of the method, you can use option in one line as before to do this. But let's see how we can handle most of the non-presence of the values, because I see a lot of boilerplate code I would like to share to you. Yes, is present and get is very easier way to have to do, and it's correct way to check about the presence of the values and then to give the value. If not, we are going to return some other value to make it sure it's satisfied our condition. So if you have public static final for something like this, user status unknown, and I would like to get the user status from the database, and it's sometimes it's prone to have empty optional. So we have to check for the value. If it exists, we return it. If it's not, we would like to return like standard unknown status. I don't know the status of this user. Okay, it's correct. Why I'm saying avoid it? Because it's boilerplate. You how many code here, like lines you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in order to do this. But it's easier to avoid these 4 lines with or else, right? So an elegant way to represent the previous code is to use or else. So if I have empty, so what does it do or else? First, it checks, do you have a value? Yes, return it. If it's not, or else will return this computed value. And be focused on what I'm saying, computed value. What does it mean? What do you mean, Mo? This is my nickname, Mo, instead of Mohammed. So I will tell you a little bit next, what does it mean? What does I mean with what do I mean with computed result? So now let's focus. Don't use if else with is present and get, and you can represent it in one line, and you even you can chain it like hr service dot get a user by status dot or else user status. So you don't have to, but I'm trying to show you here for more clarification so you can see what is the and usually I do this chaining. So this is sometimes I said to you that yes, use or else in order to return something else, but don't use or else for setting returning a computed value. Do you remember when I told you just use or else with pre-computed value? But what if I have a computed value that should be computed? Okay, there is another thing. So if you do something like, let's see here, in this example, what will happen? We have the same situation, and every time, so imagine that we do some computation trimming and do some like getting some other features or checking the user or doing some stuff in order to return. So there is computation happens here. Every time you have this status and you check about the presence of the value or not and using or else, even if the status is exist, or else will be evaluated. What does it mean? So if you writing here, like for example, returning something, and you can, I can give you an insight about this. It means that every time, just print something inside this method, system.out.println invoked, and just use this. And imagine that status, it has a status. It's not an empty. So it means if it has a status, it shouldn't run or else. But in this case, or else is always running. So always, if there is a value or not, it's running. So it's a waste. If you are doing sensitive computation here, it's a waste. It's like you are searching for a record in the cache. If it's not, go to grab it from the database. But what if it's a cache? Why I have to use or else? No, I should use something else. And I will show it to you. So something like the example that I gave to you, I'm searching for the cache first, then if it's not, go for the database. Don't use or else, because always it will go for database, and even it will return the data from the cache, and then it will invoke the database, which wasting. We open a connection, we did a query on the database, and we have bandwidth data returned to us. Like, why I have to do this? So this is very hurting for the performance. So the elegant way to do this and the correct way is to do is present and get. Nice. Yes, we can do this, but you told me that try to avoid it. Yes, we have. But I'm showing you some people doing it like this, and they are not aware that we have something called or else get. So do the same method, just change this from or else to or else get. And or else get take a supplier argument. So it means it will be invoked only if the status is not present. So if the status is present, this terminal is never gonna run. If you don't have a value inside the optional, it will compute then run. So imagine for caching, if there is immediate result in the cache, it will return, and the get employee from the database will not run. With or else, it will run in either cases. So this is the most powerful to use, or else. So rule of thumb, use or else for pre-computed results, like you have a string to return, you have something which doesn't need to be computed, or some static values that doesn't need computation. But if you do some computation, just think about it and use or else get. Get it? Great. Let's move to next point. And both of them, you are lucky, they are already exist in Java 8. Number 6, don't throw exceptions. No such element exception when there is no value using. Sometimes we need to throw an exception, and we do this in our services in order to indicate I couldn't find the user, I couldn't find something, and then we have like a global exception handler that can take up this exception and just wrap it in a very nice message to the customer or your REST endpoint. So sometimes we would like to use it, and the proper way people doing it, and most, and I assume you're not doing it, but this is what I have seen during revision of the code of my amazing colleagues, is just about use is present to do this, and in order to throw no such element exception or user not found or whatever the exception you like. So in order, if you are using no such element exception, for example, which is standard and optional, and you can do it like this. You have this method, status or else throw. Magically, it will throw no such element exception if the status is empty. Okay, and what if I would like to customize it? I would like to throw something that I would like to control over. Definitely you can. And by the way, or else throw is available since Java 10. Let's see this. Again, don't throw explicit exception when there is no value using is present get, because this is what happened. I would like to legal state exception, user not found, null pointer exception, something that I would like to throw. And in order to do this, I can prevent using these boilerplate codes and using like this or else throw. And it has already a method which takes supplier and this like illegal state exception, or you just using lambda expression and pass some information to the exception. This is how you can take control over it. So this is very nice and very slim and neat. Question number 3, how to consume optional effectively. Okay, we knew about how to avoid null pointer exception, and we knew about how to return proper values when there is no value. And here, if there is a value, how to consume it. If there is a difference, I will call get, or it will return by or else. No, there is a lot of ways to consume it, because sometimes we can hurt also performance, as you have seen before, but there is a lot of talks going here. Let's see first this example. Don't use is present get normally to do nothing if the value. Sometimes I would like to check is present user exists. For example, I have a check. I would like to see if the user exists in the database. So I use or else get in order just to say system.out print this user is present. So it's nothing. You don't do anything. So don't use this. Avoid it. So what to do? What we would like to do is just use if present to consume optional value if it is present, or do nothing if it's not. So it's very easy to have this status. If it's present, print it, or do some other computation or whatever you like. So it's one simple statement. So you don't have to use if, else, and check, and then you use get. Why? This is will satisfy your need. If it is present, it will do this action for you. If it's not, nothing will happen. Okay, another way, don't also use, you are repeating this over and over. Yes, because I have seen it over and over. Don't use it to execute an empty-based action if the value is not present. So this is like, we have a present, value is present, and I would like to say, no, if it's not present, do something. So we usually are going to use if it is present, get it. If it's not, do something else, status found or something like this. How to do this elegantly? We are going to use if present else to consume optional value if it is present, or execute an empty based action if not. So if present took two action, first one supplier, and it says, okay, you would like to print it. And for example, if you'd like to log, and if you would like to return something else, you can, or do some actions, so you can also do it with this. So if it present, print it. If it's not, print status not found in elegant way. So you don't have to use is present, which as I repeated over and over, then get an else and do all of this. Okay, and this is available since Java 9. Giving you a version here. So if you are revisiting this presentation, so and you take it as a cheat sheet, you can know, yes, I'm using Java 9 or Java 8. Yes, this is my method. And definitely you can find all of this in Java documentation for optional class. So let's also avoid something like this. Use is present again to set and return other optional when no value is present. Sometimes I would like not just printing, not just stating, not like, no, I would like to return something else of optional if there is value is not present. So imagine here, I would like to have a status. If it's not exist, just return the default status. And I see people bending because the batch is running. So I would like to to return it. So you can check the value as an optional. And this is my API, how it designed. So I defined an optional of bending normally as, and I check is present, I return the status or return default status. So don't do this. Why do we have to do this? And then we do this. So easily we can combine both of them doing this. So we have option string get status, you have the status, and you can say status or else get optional of string of bending. Okay, in one line. You don't have to use else get because you are aware of the, and here you can use else or else also because it's pre-computed and nothing will happen. But be aware also that this is wrapping the content inside an option to return another option. And also another one is you use optional, which is more preferable than before, to use optional.or to set and return another option. Instead of wrapping it inside as we did here, as you can see, we already given a wrap over over the status. What if I would like just to pass the status and it should be wrapped automatically for me? So use or, optional or. So we do this okay normally, and we can definitely in one line we can either return it like this or using or optional of bending like this. And this is because without defining. So it deals with optional. Don't use is present get with lambda. Why? Because sometimes, and it does break the flow. And in lambda, we used to chain the variables. So I found something like this. Hey man, get all the products and check for the price. If the price is less than a specific price, just find the first element. And then if it exists, get the name of the product. It's not just say not found. How we can chain. If you're studying find first, you will find that find first already returning an option, right? So why you have to do this? Also, sometimes I found people doing this. Also, don't you do this, it's breaking the chain again. So you have the product and you have optional product and you get the stream and find first, then product.map, the product name, then or else not found. I just get a void of if else, which is previously. Is there is any more elegant way? Yes, there is more elegant way, which is use optional or else get are perfect with lambdas. So you have this stream filter bending, and you see that the filter is the price, and then you would like to check the first, and then after that you mapped the product, you get the name, and finally if it exists, it will be returned as a value, the name. If it's not, it will return not found. So this is how you don't break the stream without doing division for checking using if else, or using some other like or else separately. So you can, because find first, find any, find whatever it is, they are always returning kind of optional, and then you can chain normally. And what map here comes from? It's from optional. It's not related to the stream. So we will learn about it in a bit. Don't check for value to throw an exception. What? Yes, yes, as you heard it. Don't throw an exception while you are checking for a value. So I found like this. We have cards and we have product, and I would like to see if the card is present. We have a card, or card.get items that contain specific product. If it doesn't, throw an exception. So how do I do this? So this is normal. I would like to check to throw an exception. Yes, use or else throw with lambdas. So if you have this, you have filter. So you do filtration, okay, and then check about the content, and then or else throw. So with lambda, instead of just doing this, if else, because the card is optional, and optional has filter, so you can filter and checking the content, and also if it's not exist, okay, it will throw an exception, no such element exception for you automatically, without further like defining if and doing this kind of check. So if you would like to check about the value, is it filtration, and check about the value for certain value it exists or not, you can use filter method inside lambda, inside optional, as you can see it amazingly here. And also don't overuse option, because yes, we love optional, but we overusing options. So anything we try to make it optional, but sometimes it's complicated, it's hard to read, it's not clean code. So imagine something like this: status and optional of nullable and status or else binding. So I'm checking about if the value is null, okay. If null, return else will be called. If not null, the status line. So what is the problem? It's easier just to do it in simple line, to do like this. Status equal to null, return binding. If it's not, return status. It's more clearer and also easier to read. Okay, so sometimes we overuse things because we like it. No, we have to think about the design, the computation, the calling of the methods, and everything that you at your hand. Question number 4. Okay, how can I use optionally while designing my API? Okay, this means that we start to use it and we start to design our API, classes and everything, but this is the wrong way we do it. Don't ever, never declare any field of type optional, instance field. Don't declare it. It's nothing. Don't do this, because I can assign it, and I can assign null to this. It doesn't have any kind of, I would like to check about nullability. I know I would like to be safe. And let's get back to the definition of the optional. Optional is intended to be used as a method return type only. This is why it's used for stream application when it's used as a return type. We don't use it as a container for something because it's not a type. It's a container that says that contain your value and give you expression either yes or no, it exists or not. So never use it for any other purpose, because it doesn't. Because first, if you have this kind of employee as an entity, hypernet entity or GPA entity, first, it doesn't implement serializer, so it will never work with your variable. Okay, this is very important. So it's not intended to be used for property as a Java beans. So normally, preferably, you declare your instance variable like this as a normal way. And don't use optional in a constructor argument like this. So you have string, and they would like to make the postal code as an optional. You might have it or not. So I wrap it like an option. So it's the same like wrapping postal code. And this is dependency. Also, the caller have to wrap the postal code inside optional in order to give it to you. So it's complication for the caller for your code. And also I can give you a null, pass null, because it's an option. It's an option. And you do these checks. Instead, you do normally this, and if you'd like to see the value is correctly satisfied or not, you do your checks, require null, and you do your checks. And when you get the postal code, if you'd like to know if this value is null or not, you can use optional. So it's a return type of the get post code. So you can use optional of nullable. So it will return either empty optional or the content of the postal code inside option. So it's a safe way to check the returned values. Okay. Again, don't use optional in setters in them. Is another anti-pattern. Yes, we don't use it in a method argument. We don't use it in constructor. So definitely we will not use it as a set postal code, and to check about this to make sure that it's we are avoiding, we are complicating actually. We are not avoiding the complexity. And I can pass null here, and it's a hell. So instead of doing this, definitely normally we setting the normal data because it's it, and when we need to retrieve the data or call the data and to see whether it exists or not, we just wrap it inside optional. And this is an example. This is if you need to do this. We don't do this usually. We do it for repository methods, for example, if the user exists to represent something. But if here it's very sensitive to work with, you can do it, but don't overuse it. I'm just giving you insights what developers were doing, and how to avoid it, and if there is a need. Also, using optional in a method argument is another common mistake. So if you have something like this, and you have optional render and optional string name, and you have to check and do this, and imagine that calling this method like this, I have to call it like I have to pass an optional of renderer, of cool renderer, and option. It's very complicated to call. If I don't have value, I have to have optional.empty, or I can pass you a null, as I told you before, and we are going to have problems. It's very complicated for your caller. So how to make it easy? Just state it like this, and just do your things inside. And when it is going to be called, it will be called like this: cart, new call, and then the null pointer exception if it doesn't, and you made your check. Then throw the exceptions to your caller to indicate that it's important or not. Okay, let's continue to the next one. And also you can also prefer to rely on null pointer exception if you are trying to avoid it. So objects, this is a collection objects. It's a class included in Java 8, since Java 8. So it contains a lot of handy methods, utility method that for requiring, for equaling, for checking if the value is null or is not null, or require null. A lot of. I encourage you to visit it. It's very, and it's a standard, so you don't have to use third-party libraries. So sometimes require non-null or else get. So it will check for the name, and if it's null, it will return anonymous. So you handle it without throwing null pointer exception. So you can call this safely. Also, you can avoid null pointer exception and use illegal argument exception or any other exception. So how can I control my exception? It's easily. I can define my objects and here in constructor, and then I define this static method like require non-null or else throw, and then I can pass a supplier, and based on this supplier, I can supply any kind of errors if I don't have this, because we don't have this in objects. So I defined my utility object, and I can use it like this normally. Like I would like here to throw legal argument exception or null pointer exception or no found exception or whatever it is. So I can design it like this, and the method is still safe to be called, and I have a control over my exception handling or throwing. Okay, don't use optional to return an empty of collections or array, definitely, because already lists, optional collections, they already have methods to check. And instead of doing this list of string, which doesn't have any meaning because collections already safe to have it or to create, and we can check about the size, we can check about the values, and it's a container in itself. So don't do this, and you get the items and then you wrap it inside the option. Don't. Okay, I can give you a string that repeat. Don't do it. As the previous presentation. So use collections, empty list, or empty map and empty set to give you this. So if you can use your cart, and then if you'd like to have a safe checking about the content of the list, do this. Check about the nullability. If it's null and you don't have values, just return an empty list. If it's not, you return the original list that you get it. So this is a safer way to return a list, and then you check the list dot size. It will say 0. Thank you. There is nothing. So you avoided the null pointer exception. So avoid using option in collections. Sometimes, okay, I need to make sure that the element in the collection is null pointer safe. So we are wrapping a problem surrounding with a problem. So if it's not nullable, I would like to check. If it's not, it will return an empty. You are returning an empty. Imagine that at first it will consume a memory. It's require more memory space, and you are filling your hash map with a lot of optional that also, I told you, based on the optional holder or generic type, it will consume a memory. If it's an object, it will consume a lot, and and it's without anything. It's nothing. It's just filling. We are trying to wrap the original problem with more problems and hurt the memory. So don't do this. Normally, we don't need to introduce another layer into your map, which is costly and also performance hit, as I told you. So only we can use it like this normally, and we can develop get item. So what get item does for us, this get item, it will take the map and string key, and it will check map.get order or default. If it contain null, it will get not found. So it's safe for you. It's not returning null. You can define this only in your class, or just you can also rely on other approaches such as contains key or trivial implementation of extending hash map, or using compute if absent, and also defaulted map in Apache. So even avoid doing this. So as a key or E key, avoid it. I have seen a lot of people doing this, but you have to avoid it. So we have 4 minutes left. This is very nice communication, guys. Thank you. So use optional of nullable instead of optional of, because it's a why. Let's see this example. So fetch item name, and I would like to, this is might throw null pointer exception if item name is null. So if the item name, the item that I would like to check might have, it might be null, don't use of, because of trying to get the item, check it, and it will throw null pointer exception. How to make this? So use of for computed value or static value, and prefer to use of nullable, because there is no risk for throwing null pointer exception. So you can use of nullable, and it will return optional of this item as an empty list. Here it will not return because it will return the value directly if it's not exist. So it will throw null pointer exception. So use optional of instead of optional. So I told you, if I have something like this, it doesn't make any sense. So it doesn't add any value because it's always non-null. So it's always going to return There is no alternative. So use off for this one. So when we have null, we assume that we could have null, we use off nullable. If we always know that we don't have null and like optional of this, we are going to return use off. So there is no risk for null pointer exception. Avoid optional and choose non-generic. When you are working with numbers like long int, so rely on, don't use this. This is very performance hurt because it involves auto boxing and unboxing. And also you use the not optimized optional for numbers. So what to do is easier to do it like this. To avoid boxing and unboxing and use non-generic optional, use optional int, optional long, and optional double. And you can get the value as a double, as a long. They are designed to be used efficiently with numbers. Like, I like optional. What can we do more? The last question. Let's see. There is no need to unwrap optional for asserting qualities. This is very important. So if I have two optional and I would like to make sure that they are equal, so we don't have to call get. Why? Because they are case sensitive. So the internal implementation of optional get is actually checking not the reference of the optional, they're checking the actual values. So you don't have to call get to get the value. Just do like this. Great. Avoid using identity sensitive operations. So don't use if you have these two, so and they are definitely are different pointers, so it will return false. We are expecting true, so don't do this. As I told you before, use optional.equal, so it will give you the proper way of handling, because as I told you, they are not a value, they are just normal object. Avoid sensitive identity equality using equal with optional. Use optional.equal method. Avoid rejecting wrap values based on is present. Do you remember? If I have a password and I would like to check if the password is present, okay. Also password, get the value. If the length is greater than 5, return it, yes, the valid password. If it's not, return true. We can enhance this in very elegant way. If you remember, we can use filter, so we can use password.filter if password.length greater than this, and then is present. If it's not present, it will return false. It's present, it will return true, and that's it. It's very easy. Great. We have two more. Returning a boolean if an optional is empty via is present. Using this, don't do this. So if I have an optional and a card, and I would like to see if the card might be null, so I wrap it inside optional as a string because I'm getting some items, and is empty card, so I'm checking if the card for ID is empty, then I see if it's not present. So it's easier way, just don't do this. To use present, you can use Java 11 provide for us is empty, so it's the same, but you use it's empty, more readable, and you don't have if not present or present. So just readability, and it's doing the same. The last two pieces, don't use is present to check the value for first, then transform it. So if we have lowercase, then I would like to transfer the name to uppercase, then this is what I do. Lowercase dot if it present optional of lowercase dot get, transfer it to uppercase, and then else return optional of empty. So don't do this, avoid it using is present. So you can use map or flat map to transform the value easily, and also it will check for nullability or the item exists or not. And for example, if we have this, we can say lower name dot map string dot to uppercase. It does two things here. First, it check about if the name is empty or null. So if it's not, it will return an empty collection. If it exists, it will start to do the transformation and return for you the final result as an optional. This is a map. When to use map to transform values, so imagine this, and sometimes we would like to have a product and we would like to check the filter about the product and then find first, and then we check about the presence and if it's okay, transfer the name to uppercase. If it's not, say not found, and then we have get method inside the class, and it returns string. Okay, this is very important point. So we can use map in this way, like this product.stream.filter and and find first return the map get name return string. So it map will wrap this value inside another optional, and then we can do another map to uppercase. So we just transform the product into another stream of string. Then this stream should be uppercased, and then if it's not found actually from the first filter or from this find first, it will return not found. But what if get name return different value like this? It's return or actually optional string. So what to do? So, and we do this previously. In this case, we have to use flat map. First, we have to flat map this one. Why? Because flat map originally it returns the value as the same, so it will return optional. If we use map, it will return optional of string. So this is the problem. So if the method returns string, use map safely because it's already wrapped the converted value with optional. If it's not and already returned as an optional of string, use flat map. Okay. Last piece. Do we need to chain the optional API with the stream? Yes, we love to do this. So avoid you doing this. You have get product, and we would like to fetch product by ID, and it return optional product. So we have products, IDs, dot stream, and then we do map this dot get product, filter, map optional dot get, and collect. So prefer to use optional stream because it's make it hooking. It hooks in the stream. So what to do instead of doing this one is in order to use filter and then map and then collect, and we are wrapping here and doing all of this kind of stuff. We use stream to hook it. So what happens? So I'm telling that okay, product list the get stream dot map map all of this method to fetch product by IDs. Okay, so it will return optional product, and then flat map optional stream. So flat map it. So optional stream, it will return a stream of this optional. So I can also make collect. So it will return a stream of optional. So I can call the stream API, continue calling stream API on this chain. If I don't do this, it will return normally optional of map. So I cannot perform any more aggregate function or collecting or another stream about this. So optional.stream actually return a stream of optional, so I can continue chaining the stream API successfully without breaking my code. Also, we can convert optional to list like this. So we can optional.stream.collect.toList, and we will have the list. So thank you very much for your attendance, and all the questions should be happening now when I join the Q&A. I hope that you find it useful, this presentation, the previous one. So I will try to join. So it's here. Yep. Can you send? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mohamed. Yes, the link will be sent to you just right now to the Q&A Zoom room. You will need to reconnect in another Zoom. And dear participants, please join the Zoom room and ask your questions. And if you have any, if you want to have any discussion with Mohamed, he will be glad to have it, I'm sure. So thank you once again. Thank you for supporting Devoxx Ukraine online and for conducting even 2 talks. It was a pleasure to welcome you on this online stage.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.